So let's start our first category with weak cohesion. So weak cohesion is the quote unquote worst form of cohesion. It means that we don't have a lot of cohesion. And remember, we want strong cohesion and loose coupling. So with weak cohesion, what we have is we have these modules that are built, but they don't really have a purpose. And this creates this idea of spaghetti code, which means there might be maybe 1,000 different modules in a file, but none of them have a purpose and none of them are linked together in any conceivable way. Therefore, anyone else trying to join the project would have no idea how anything works. There would be no set or guideline, nothing that they could follow to figure it out. They would just have to play around with it until they learned it. And that really slows down production because you can't hire additional people without all of this time that it'll take to get them up to speed. So with weak cohesion, we have a couple of categories to start off with. The first one is this idea of coincidental cohesion. So coincidental cohesion means that the only reason that these ideas and activities and things are together in this module is just because they're in the same file. They're coincidentally together. So we have a file and we just put in a whole bunch of different random stuff into it. So coincidentally, they have this association. They're grouped together because we say they're grouped together. And an example of this might be clean the car, eat at restaurant, write book report, fly to Dallas, Texas. There's no logical combination of these things. There's nothing focused on this. It's just a random bunch of tasks here. And this could actually be one step farther than coincidental, just because these are all activities. We could even have something like where we put E right here, and it's just something like a noun, like dog. And then now they're not even all activities. Now they're just even more random. And so whenever you get to this point of just randomness, that gets you down to coincidental. And like I said, it's impossible to debug something like this because you'll have like a whole bunch of files that all do this, and then they're all linking randomly to other files, and it doesn't make any sense, the flow of the program. Some examples of this are like a single file program. So like we were talking about with that giant single file, and the whole program runs from that one maybe JavaScript file or Java file or something like that. That is a coincidental cohesion. There's nothing linking that together except that they're all part of the same program and they're all in the same file. The mismatch controller as well. So if we have, for example, like a model view controller, or we have a controller class that we're trying to, pass everything into. We have these ideas and we're trying to create better code. But if we don't actually sort of give it a purpose and we just put everything into that controller class, it becomes coincidental cohesion as well. And maybe a little bit over to logical if they're all controllers, if they all actually do activities. But usually there's something in there that doesn't, and it kind of falls back into this category. And then, like I said, spaghetti code, where we just have all these modules that all have absolutely no purpose talking to one another. So that is coincidental cohesion. Just file, all that it has is that it's in the same file. The next one is this idea of temporal cohesion. And that means that they're linked together because events happen around the same time. And so if we went for a real world example here, it would be like brush teeth, take shower, eat breakfast, wake up. And what are these? These are like a morning routine. So they all happen right around the beginning of our morning. So they're linked together. They're better than this over here. But again, it's not very helpful because there's still activities that are all over the place here. I mean, we have two things happening in the bathroom, one in the kitchen, this one's in the bedroom. Some of them are consuming items, some of them are just using others, some of them are cleaning, some of them are a change of state. So we're going from sleep to waking up. They're all completely different in their amount of control, their amount of changing things around them. And if you're thinking a program, you can see this as well. Like imagine if something was happening on the front end, this is in maybe like the database over here. This is purely on the back end, maybe at the caching servers. Some of them are changing front end variables, some are changing back end variables, some are grabbing from the database. They're all over the place. Even though they happen at relatively the same time, again, it's not very cohesive. And an example of this is like a program like do shutdown activities or do maybe startup activities, stuff like that, is these sort of things that activate at a certain time around the same time. And that is temporal cohesion. The next one is logical cohesion. So we're sort of getting a little bit better with logical cohesion. And in this sense, it's activities which are linked in the same general category. So what we have is we have drive to Dallas, fly to Dallas, take train to Dallas, and take boat to Dallas. So these are all activities in which we are heading to Dallas. But the problem here is that they're all used in different places. And so what I mean by that is that we could have a program written. Let's say that this over here, this grouping is in this controller right here. We could have a bunch of different modules calling one-offs from this controller, one at a time, one at a time, one at a time. And the problem with that is that they're all sort of forced to change their interface so that they will match the other ones. Like, for example, if we're taking a train, we might need a ticket. However, if we're taking a boat, maybe we don't need a ticket, but we still have to pass in an empty variable saying that there's no ticket for the train, but we're actually using a boat. And so we have this sort of locked interface that doesn't allow us to communicate clearly with this. And a lot of times we might not ever use fly to Dallas, for example. And so now we have this method that isn't really used, but it's with other methods that are frequently used. And so it becomes an issue where we can't edit. It becomes hard to track certain things, and it's just not a very useful file overall. And something that might be a real-world example of this would be something like a backup controller that has a whole bunch of different areas it should back up to. So maybe one of them is to the cloud, one of them is to like some backup hard drive or something. One of them is a local backup, etc., etc. We have all of these different backups in here, and we're sort of just calling them one at a time and having to provide these different interfaces for each one of these calls. So instead of this, we might look to, break it up later on, and that's what we'll talk about a little bit more later on. But these are some examples of some very weak cohesion, things that are just not very well organized and that are all sort of only together with a very small amount of thought. Either they're coincidentally together, so they're just together because of the fact they're together. They're temporally, so we kind of like put them in the same time, or they're logically, so we sort of put them in the same general category. But again, there isn't very good specialization in here. So that is weak cohesion. Next, we're going to be talking about medium cohesion, which is kind of the area we want to be aiming for. And we'll move on from there.